Hey guys, welcome back to another video overanalyzing every single episode of My Little Pony. I'm very glad that you guys decide to spend the next however long this video ends up being to listen to me nerd about stuff, and I don't think I show my gratitude enough for you guys, and when I do, it's always at the end of the video. So I just want to take some time at the beginning of this video this time and say thank you guys for joining. We're a little over 2/3 of season 2 at this point, and I just wanted to really thank you guys for taking along in the ride so far. And if you're a first-time viewer to this channel, welcome. I'm very glad you could join us today. Let's get on with it.
Lunchtime! Who's hungry? Plenty for every pony.
So this episode starts off with these freeloader animals being better fed than most people on Earth, with this ingrate being ungrateful towards the very vessel single-handedly keeping him alive. Which is actually not a bad metaphor for life. Oftentimes, I think it's easy to find ourselves in the position of getting so used to genuine blessings we all have, such as being able to eat most days, having a roof over your head, a body that functions, internet access, that's a big one, that we long for things we don't have rather than lavishly enjoying the things we do have to their fullest extent. And I know that if we all put just a little bit more collective effort into trying to live out our lives as the second thing I mentioned, we'd live in a much better society. Then again, this complaining attitude results in roasting Fluttershy, so that's at least a fantastic silver lining. Either way, despite the fact that we've seen Fluttershy be perfectly capable of putting her hoof down when she needs to,
Allow me. Girls? Yes, Fluttershy? You called? Go and get your things.
in a fit of altruism, she caves in on Angel Bunny's demands.
Okay, Mr. Picky Pants. You win. Carrots, lettuce, and apples. Yum, yum, yum.
On a side note, I've always wondered if Fluttershy pre-prepared this dish knowing that Angel wouldn't eat the usual green stuff because she knows his habits by now, or if this was her lunch that she decided to pawn off to him as a last-ditch effort. I know the meta reason for this already being here is so that we don't need to waste precious screen time and animation efforts showing Fluttershy cooking this whole thing from scratch, and I completely understand that, but what's the in-universe reason here? Either way, Fluttershy gets further roasted by this book.
I'm not sure I can even make that piece of...
I actually loved the sound they use here. I mean, there's no reason for the book to be making that sound, but I guess they just really wanted to accentuate the impact of the book hitting Fluttershy. I also love the sigh she gives, as if getting bossed around by her animals is nothing new. So Fluttershy goes outside to buy these ingredients and gets cut in line. Freaking withered Freddy jump scare side motion. Damn.
Oh, pardon me, sir.
Yes, it was.
Okay, I get the point of this is to show that Fluttershy is a pushover, but leave the old man alone. He's clearly senile.
I think you just cut in front of me.
A cut of celery? This is the asparagus stand.
Plus, it seems as if he's had a long life and probably doesn't have much time left with us anyway. On a side note, I love this guy's cutie mark. He must be so talented with this kind of cutie mark that he got fired from his other job a few episodes ago.
I noticed.
I was like, oh, wow.
Wow, judging by these two's colors, is that Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie in disguise? Never mind, they're different ponies and their names are... Okay, well, they don't have official names, but fan-given placeholder names of them are Surf and Turf. Still, their resemblance to Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie are kind of undeniable, and if that decision was intentional, wouldn't this have been a hilarious visual representation if they looked like Pinkie and Rarity instead, seeing how this part ends with Pinkie and Rarity showing up?
Fluttershy, you mustn't let them treat you that way.
Sure, tell Fluttershy that it's her fault for letting them treat her that way, rather than speaking up against the people who are rude to her in the first place.
But
Seriously? Do you need your asparagus so badly? Get out live.
Totally not victim blaming here.
oh, good.
I like how this guy starts off smiling and then becomes discontent when this guy takes the asparagus and only smiles after he gets paid again. Almost as if to say that he was slightly worried that this guy was gonna take off with the asparagus without actually paying for it. The thing is, if he actually was thinking that, I like how his instinct is to just put on a sad face rather than speaking up. Maybe he's just an underpaid employee by the actual asparagus guy. And he's like, man, I don't get paid enough to actually care. He can take it if he wants.
Oh, that's okay. I don't mind. Watch and learn.
But speaking of these two, they try to show Fluttershy how to stand up for her damn self, such as Rarity doing this.
Hold it right there, Mr. Small and Handsome.
Who? Me?
Oh, of course, you.
We've previously seen her use her charm to manipulate people to her liking, but I guess it's kind of telling that this attempt actually worked, unlike the time when she tried it on the dragon.
Personally, I think you should skip the snoozing and be out there, showing them off. Obviously, I would be more than happy to keep an eye on your jewels while you're gone.
Because she decided to pick a way easier target this time around. I guess this is a bit of a given, seeing how we've had multiple episodes in season 1 where Rarity fails to impress those quote-unquote above her in society with her attempts at charm.
I am not going to help you shine across Equestria. I am going to help her shine. She is my star. You go.
And this may actually say something about Rarity as a character and how she's perfectly willing to target those who are beneath her rather than picking on someone her own size, because this is textbook manipulation and leading someone who doesn't even have a chance on, all for a piece of asparagus. But on that topic, on top of this false flattery,
Oh, my heavens! Do you think a strong, handsome stallion such as yourself could give my friend the last asparagus?
I like how, you know, this guy kind of has no choice because his asparagus is being magic, when he doesn't have the ability to magic it back if he comes to his senses. Rarity, pick on someone your own size. Still, I'm not giving this guy a full pass either. Don't worry, because at least Rarity reimburses the guy and he can just go back and buy an asparagus eventually. But this character kind of pisses me off on his own right. Not because of his personality or appearance or anything, but okay, I guess technically his personality and appearance, because his cutie mark being a robot bothers me quite a bit. If it was an equine robot, maybe there's some wiggle room, but the fact that it's a humanoid with arms and legs and a human-like body brings up some questions I want answered, such as, how is that possible? There's that theory that humans once existed in Equestria long ago but went extinct. Based on the fact that Equestria is Earth continent shaped, what if this is an indicator that humans are long gone but human inventions still exist? And I guess what we think of when we think of traditional robots on 2 legs are still being found for ponies to have cutie marks about. This would technically make sense, but what the hell? You know what? Now that we're on that topic, what else bugs me about this guy is that if this guy owns a mirror and takes one good, even one bad look at himself, he should know better that there's no way a pony like Rarity would genuinely want anything to do with him. Yet it's his ego telling him that he's made it after all and falling for obvious fake flattery that screws him over.
No pony ever called you handsome before?
That'd be a big no.
I'm not saying once like this, always like this, but what I am saying is that self-reflection is good, and if we are at this guy's level, we should take note of his weaknesses and all build ourselves up to the point where the stuff Rarity says to us actually applies to us in reality and not just pride-filled fantasy. But speaking of deception, on the price of a tomato, Pinky does this whole Looney Tunes reference.
1 bit!
2 bits.
2 bits!
1 bit.
2 bits!
1 bit.
I insist it's 2 bits or nothing!
1 bit, and that's my final offer.
I said you're out!
I'm safe.
You're out!
Safe.
Out!
Safe.
Out!
Safe.
Out!
Safe.
Out! Safe!
Out.
Safe!
Out.
Safe!
Out.
I say you're safe!
Down to the exact wording here.
Have it your way, 1 bit it is!
Have it your way. I'm safe.
Which is great in terms of using the same influences and backbone for humor as the first season, and I love consistency like that, which is why I bring up callbacks to previous episodes. But what's not great is how they go on to say,
See? Asserting yourself can be fun! I guess you're right.
in what world is what you just did classified as assertion? When both of these things, but especially Pinky's demonstration, was built on straight up deception. Yes, there is a point to be made about how the tomato lady could have been overcharging. And in those cases, it's good to assert yourself, obviously, but you don't have to do it through deception like this. Plus, what if this raising of the price was due to factors and circumstances outside of the merchant's control, such as inflation? Or just as a random example, what if someone in her family who's responsible for harvesting tomatoes for the business got injured last night and now they need to jack up prices ever so slightly to afford medical care and to make up for less work output from the guy needing to take a break? And that's the situation the person you're trying to deceive is in. Now, yes, healthy skepticism is good and necessary if you don't want to be completely taken advantage of like Fluttershy, but what Pinky does just seems like the type of person that's also pushing Fluttershy around, so...
I need that cherry. You see, I'm making this special meal for my bunny angel. He's a very picky eater, and the recipe calls for a cherry on top.
Yeah, tell him your entire life story, why don't you?
Boy, am I glad you have 1 cherry left.
That's kind of adorable.
Say you need this cherry very badly.
I'm desperate for it.
Then it'll be 10 bits.
10?
Wow, if only you kept your job as a cherry farmer.
I need that cherry no matter what it costs.
In that case, 20 bits.
20?
Wow, that guy must have some extraordinary hearing abilities if he was able to hear her whispery voice from all the way over there. Wow.
I'll give you 2 bits for that cherry.
So, that's a break, kid. Next time, don't be such a doormat.
Okay, first of all, how is that any of your business? Second of all, good thing Ponyville doesn't have Google reviews, or else this guy could be out of a job. I actually really like how they added a goat here and called attention to it sort of by adding that sound effect. Yet it doesn't actually explain why the goat is here until way later. From how he's carrying this thing, it's implied that he's delivering something, but what he actually is delivering isn't revealed until after this whole thing with Angel happens. And even when we do see the note, there's nothing goat related on it. And the reason that the goat is here is only revealed after the commercial break. And I actually really like that level of subtlety. I just love the detail of how they added the goat here instead of not having it here, you know? Especially when this is a detail you're likely to not even fully register the first time you watch the episode, which is a really cool way of the show rewarding the viewer for watching the same episode more than once. In other words, it respects us and makes it worthwhile to pay attention to the show. That's fantastic.
As Celestia is my witness, I'm never gonna be a pushover again!
That's slightly good world building to make this a well-known phrase said by different characters.
As Celestia is my witness, I shall never be sisterless again!
Okay, it's either that or because both of these lines are a reference to this line from this movie.
And God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again.
It is entirely possible that the writer just wanted to reference that line because it's famous without realizing it was already parodied in an earlier episode, but we'll be glass half full here. Well, Fluttershy and a whole bunch of cloned ponies attended this self-help seminar and...
Oh, excuse me.
Okay, I get that Fluttershy went all the way to the front of the crowd just for the show to get across the fact that she gets thrown around like this. But was it even in character for her to just not meander about in the back of this crowd in the first place?
Welcome, friends. My name is Iron Will.
Really? I would have had no idea. It's not like they came to this thing from an advertisement that had your name and a picture on it or anything.
The incredible Iron Will turns doormats into dynamos.
Captain Obvious?
Iron Will is so confident that you will be 100% satisfied with Iron Will's assertiveness techniques that if you are not 100% satisfied, you pay nothing.
I didn't even realize they were paying in the first place. It seems like people are just pulling into the maze without any registry desk or anything in front of it. And it's not like this is a preview session. He literally gives a whole bunch of techniques here.
That, my friends, is your first lesson. Don't be shy. Look him in the eye.
Unless if you look something along the lines of this. I'm pretty sure that's gonna set you back. Long story short, Fluttershy gets called up to the stage and...
When some pony tries to block, show them that you rock.
I would sure hope that there wasn't any equivalent to that kind of situation in Equestria Girls. What the heck would these goat guys be in the human world anyway? But on the topic of this whole thing, if you're wondering why this thing is going on in a maze of all settings, when that's probably a horrible meeting place for a seminar.
Assertiveness seminar today, Hedge Maze Center.
Hey guys, if you want to attend my workshop, find your way through this literal maze to the middle. Yeah, it sounds convoluted, but it's actually because in Greek mythology, the Minotaur, yes, the Minotaur is just one guy, not a whole species, likes to mingle about in the center of this maze thingy called the Labyrinth. So this setting is actually a really cool treat for people with Greek mythology knowledge. Awesome. So Fluttershy goes home with a few takeaways from Iron Will and...
I feel good. I feel ready to attack the day, as Iron Will says. I think you might be overwatering my petunias again.
Let the professional handle it.
Wow, this guy must be as talented as the asparagus stand guy from earlier. Just look at his cutie mark.
Treat me like a pushover and you'll get the once-over.
Okay, both sides of the situation are a little sad. He's clearly not all there due to old age.
Well, perhaps that is enough water.
Thank you.
And in all his years, he's never found a special talent. What a life.
I can't believe it worked.
Show pony business is tough.
Go ahead, try one of your jokes out on me. I laugh at everything.
Okay, I've never mentioned this before, but rewatching all these episodes, I think I really dig Cherry Berry. I think she's pretty awesome.
Sorry.
In fact, I'm in bated breath anytime she's on screen because I love to hear her speak. I think she is cute. Like here.
Try to land the spiders on the web.
Like, that's adorable. Come on. And I think she's funny. Like here.
I can't get the taste off my tongue.
There's barely any correlation between those two lines in terms of anything along the lines of demeanor and personality, but it's funny. I like it. And when a few episodes ago, she was flying a hot air balloon, and the show later establishes her as an actual pilot, I think that's awesome. However, why did they have to make her such a B-word here?
Excuse me, would you mind moving your cart so I can pass?
Yeah, in a minute. I just want to finish up this story.
You move, you're blocking my path.
Yeah, in a minute.
You know, usually I do the whole routine where I'm like, Fluttershy sucks. Anyone who is mean to Fluttershy is awesome in my book. But here it's just... Nah, that's uncalled for. I never thought that I would side with Fluttershy over someone who I actually think is cool. But reality is stranger than fiction sometimes. Wow. Then again, her line...
And so the donkey says to the mule...
is pretty hilarious. I think the delivery is awesome. So at least there's that. As in, because of the humorous nature of the way she says it and how it's supposed to be overly over-the-top obnoxious, I wouldn't say this is a completely mean-spirited scene. So I'm not gonna say this part's like the whole reason I don't like this episode or anything, but it's very jarring how her voice is completely different from her previous appearances.
A donkey and a mule are stuck on a desert island.
And how she went from a person who, even while scared, would try to help others into being like this. It feels like character assassination. And obviously that wasn't on purpose. So it's really a demonstration of how no real thought was put into what these background ponies are actually like. Plus, the show's staff will be the first to admit the reason for this writing quirk.
Are there any background ponies that you really don't like what the fans have come up with as that pony's personality? Or really disagree with it?
From my perspective, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't really know anything about that. In a script, it'll say background pony 1, background pony 2. THX will put in who they want, and then you guys go absolutely crazy and make it into a real character.
Yeah, it's not written into the script like these people will be in the these ponies will be in the back.
Just like we don't read fan fiction, we don't know a lot about the background ponies. We obviously know about certain ones.
And if we did, we'd be pandering, right?
Yeah, and I'm wearing a background pony too, but I have no idea what his backstory is.
Which is completely fair and understandable and reasonable. It's just that when we as viewers pay attention to these particular background ponies, I guess it all kind of seems meaningless in the grand scheme of things if they have no consistency between them.
Easy does it, lady. We're moving, okay?
Oh yeah. What were these two doing with these carts full of garbage anyway? Are they supposed to be the town's garbage people? You wouldn't think so because their cutie marks have nothing to do with that occupation. Perhaps this is some really odd side hustle?
Who's next, please? And what can I get for you today?
Wow, judging by these two's colors, is that surf and turf?
What do you think you're doing? Didn't you see me?
I guess maybe. Now go to the back of the line where you belong!
Okay, to be fair, valid crash out. It's unreasonable for everybody else to also be going to the back of the line, but for Shoeshine, she probably did need to learn a lesson.
Hey, look at you! Your attitude is so feisty.
Wow, I sure do love how Rarity is just randomly here. Bruh. There is technically a reason this may be the case, but we'll get back to that a little later. We've got more important issues to discuss, such as how Fluttershy starts acting like this toward people.
Oh, no, you don't. Cut in line, I'll take what's mine.
Okay, beating someone up like this is a little too far. It is a bit of an overreaction, I'd say. But in Fluttershy's defense, she did call the taxi first.
Taxi!
And there's no way this guy who's right over here did not hear Fluttershy call it first. So I can't really say I'm on this guy's side either. Plus, I don't like how smug he looks after cutting in line. Not cool.
No pony pushes new Fluttershy around. No pony!
Okay, so no one can push you around, but they can pull you around all they want?
This day is yours, and no pony's gonna take it away from you. Am I right?
Oh, what is this? Cupcakes Fluttershy edition?
What? He's delivered the wrong mail again!
Now, to be fair, if I got the wrong mail constantly delivered to me, I'd be pretty pissed off too.
You apologize, I penalize.
I'm not sure if Fluttershy was slightly in the right here or if that says more about me than anything, but as a deliverer, you have one job. This might sound a little bit complicated, but all you have to do is look at the funny little letters and numbers on a package and bring that package to a building with the same little letters and numbers on it. Wow, mind blown. If you can't even do that, how did you even get the job in the first place? And I get that, at least in the episode, this is for comedic and storytelling effect, and obviously there's zero problem with that. A person with an occupation who's incompetent at the job is a trope that's as old as time and is usually really funny. So I'm not saying that there's a problem with this character character or the scene or anything. What I am saying is that from my place of experience of getting wrong packages delivered to my address, or even worse, far worse, my packages being delivered to the wrong place, I can sympathize with Fluttershy in this scene.
Ooh.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I see this more as catharsis for the viewer who's probably faced the same problems as this before, than just seeing it as Fluttershy's descent into madness. And I'm not sure if that's what the episode was going for.
Excuse me, do you know how to get to the Ponyville Tower?
Her, yes.
I think it's kind of poetic how the last episode had important pieces of paper being set on fire. And now this one has some being wetted, such as the circle of life.
Oh, that's a shame.
That's a shit. That's an understatement. What if that was a paycheck? What if that was a lottery ticket? What if that was a letter from a long distance loved one? That's a shame. Oh my. Okay, I know I was making a point of how I think most of Fluttershy's crash outs are from valid reasons at least. Not to the extent she was crashing out at, but the reason at least was kind of justified. But I think here we actually cross a line in terms of making her not empathizable anymore. Because, I mean, yeah, even if this guy was asking a question while you're busy, just the most credit I can really give Fluttershy here. Because it's not like he was purposefully trying to annoy her or anything. It was her fault for not being careful with the paper being dropped in water. So I'm glad it's not like every instance of Fluttershy being mean worked against the episode for being relatable. This one we can actually fully pinpoint as Fluttershy's own fault because it's her own doing. And I actually really like how that change is signified by the fact that Fluttershy is just in an angry mood right now. She takes actions in anger rather than, I guess, rebuttal like earlier because someone actually objectively wronged her. But here she's just looking at things to be angry about on purpose, or at least that's the reading I get from this. So good job on the writer for this. I like that distinction. Also, the fact that this guy ends up finding the tower anyways and he's happy is actually kind of inspirational, and I think we should all be like this guy. Someone just angrily crashed out at him, and it was kind of out of his control. But the thing is that if she didn't do this, he wouldn't have landed directly next to the place he was looking for. As in, he could have sat there and started complaining and started being sad, and someone just threw him. And yeah, those are valid emotions to have. But I think the fact that he optimistically smiles at this kind of shows us that even in the darkest of times, there are always silver linings. 11 out of 10 mini lesson you can only get by dissecting literally every single shot in this entire show for more than is necessary. But back on the topic of Fluttershy.
Fluttershy.
I like how she looks super pleased with herself after assaulting that guy. Well, one thing leads to another, and we get this splendid scene.
Things getting too complicated for your simple little brain, Pinkie Pie.
Roasted?
Let's not let things descend into petty insults. Why not? I thought petty was what you're all about, Rary.
Roasted again!
Hey, leave her alone. Fashion is her passion. Oh, and what are you passionate about? Birthday cake? Party hats?
Oh, I think I'm in love. As long as she doesn't turn back to normal by the end of the episode. Though, do you guys suppose that Fluttershy said such fire-writing, gift-worthy roasts to her friends just to insult them regardless of the specifics? Or do you think she actually feels this way about them deep inside?
I can't believe that the two most frivolous ponies in Ponyville are trying to tell new Fluttershy how to live her life when they are throwing their own lives away on pointless pursuits that no pony else gives a flying about.
I heard a quote once saying something along the lines of, what people tell you when they're angry is how they really feel about you. And in theory, I agree, because being unrelentingly angry causes you to have less filter than usual. However, in practice, there's obviously a whole lot more factors than just that, such as how anger definitely impacts your ability to judge things and just impacts your perception of things in general. So even if you're less filtered, you're just less filtered about your emotions and how you present yourself, not what you objectively think as fact after you've assessed them with reason. But because of how specific her roasts here are, that kind of makes me think that there might be something to this, but definitely let me know what you think. Also, I really like this part. Earlier, while talking about Gizmo, I brought up how he's a good lesson and how self-reflection is good and beneficial, and I really think that assessing your thoughts and actions and being honest with yourself if you were wrong about something or have hurt somebody or even thinking back to good things that you've done that you should double down on going forward is great. So seeing her actually come to this realization
I'm the monster.
after a literal self-reflection is really cool. This is excellent visual storytelling. If this show was bad or mediocre even, I think we would have just had Fluttershy saying all her thoughts out loud to herself. Was I too harsh? I should apologize. So what if you can see the darkest side of me? No one would ever change this animal I've become. Which would have been lame and lazy and totally not taking advantage of the fact that what we're watching here is a visual medium and not a podcast. So once again, I'm giving huge props to this episode. It's good writing, and not to mention the freaking rippling effects on the water here. Great job animators as well. Wow. So Fluttershy shuts her off from society, and I think it's quite depressing how these eggs over here disappear. It reads to me like Fluttershy takes care of these eggs from predators, but now that she's boarded herself up, some predator got to these, which I guess is technically no sadder than us eating egg, but maybe because all the characters here are animals, it feels a little worse within the show than in real life. Then again, when I was deciding what B-roll to put over this topic of eating eggs, what came to mind was this. And the characters there are animals and they're eating eggs, so I don't know if that's... I don't know, man. Perhaps these birdhouses here becoming uninhabited doesn't really help either. But speaking of helping, Rarity and Pinky show up trying to get Fluttershy to come back out, and...
There are other ways to assert yourself besides yelling at every pony.
What? Like tricking and scamming people?
Yes! You can stand up for yourself without being unpleasant about it.
I'd say leading people on is pretty unpleasant, but what do I know? But still, I know I just talked about how great the animation was, but if you let me nerd out about it just one more time, this shot seems like it would have been kind of not easy to do. There's quite a bit going on here. And in fact, there's this video that recreates and breaks down all the effects used here, and it really does seem like it had a whole lot of thought put into it.
First off, we've got a parallax pan, meaning that the foreground and background move at different rates, similar to how perspective works in real life. In this case, the background and foreground move in opposite directions to simulate an arcing camera move. Same goes for the depth of field, blurring out different levels to simulate a rack focus and guide what we're paying attention to. In this case, once Fluttershy's attention goes to the door, we change focus. What stands out most to me in this shot is how they handled Fluttershy's eyes. They wrap around the head much more than usual, accentuating the roundness of the form. The blink here is also smoother than usual, with extra in-betweens to put it on ones, whereas a lot of regular blinks in the show are done on twos. Lastly is the shadow on Fluttershy's face, which again helps describe the roundness of the head. For a bright, colorful show like this, it's a pretty rare occurrence. Even when scenes or entire episodes take place at night, they don't usually put shadows on the characters. They just tone down the color some. I just drew a semi-transparent black shape and used a shape tween to follow the turn of the head.
That is actually very, very insightful.
You just received some bad advice from that Iron Will character. Yeah, he's the one that made you act super duper nasty.
Oh, he's the one who forcibly made Fluttershy act that way? Nice backtracking from earlier.
We think that you've taken your assertiveness training a little too far.
Well, which is it?
Whenever I try to assert myself, I become a monster.
Okay, so obviously the horn here represents that Fluttershy is turning into a monster and evil, but what are the implications of that? Because if Fluttershy sees the horns and realizes, man, I'm becoming an evil monster, and us in real life also associate horns with evil monsters, that would mean that whatever reason we associate with horns with evil in real life would also probably exist for the ponies. And I started asking how that connotation even started, because I guess I always just thought horned creatures equal evil, but never really took the time to figure out why. So I did some additional research and did this entire write-up on why horns are depicted as evil. Get ready for social studies with F-. It's kind of complicated, but to sum it up, there are horned deities all across the world in different cultures, and there was this like more prominent one named Pan, and in the area where Pan was worshipped and started becoming a prominent location in Christianity. And in the book of Revelation in the Bible, it mentions something called the beast of the sea, which is interpreted to be the Antichrist. And Revelation 13 says that this beast is going to have 10 horns. And I'm pretty sure horns were originally a symbol of power, because in nature, you know, before technology existed, all you have is nature and animals. Big, strong animals would have horns, right? So when people were depicting deities and higher forces, they used the horn to represent power. And therefore, when Christianity started to become widespread, deities with those horns, regardless of where they were from or what they originally represented, kind of all got retconned into being evil false gods. And I guess because so many of these pagan deities had horns, Satan himself and demons started being depicted as having horns. Now, the issue I have with that whole thing is I read the book of Revelation, and elsewhere in it, Revelation chapter 5, there's a lamb that appears that represents Jesus, and it's described as having 7 horns. So I'm pretty sure horns just represent power regardless of inherent alignment, I guess. So with all that out of the way, I'm just saying in a different cultural context, Fluttershy seeing herself with these horns may not actually mean that she's evil. But because we're looking at this with a Western context and with history and culture and all that, these horns obviously represent the devil. And before you go, well, who said anything about the devil? The horns are probably just a stand-in for a typical monster, not the devil. Need I remind you of this costume? So yeah, the pointy horns equals devil connotation definitely exists in this world. So now I'm wondering how much of that historical context that led up to that connotation exists in Equestria. But speaking of beings with horns, we get Iron Will scarily coming to threaten Fluttershy to compensate him for the work that he fully did.
Minotaur, like you, doesn't need that money right away. You can afford to come back later.
Are you kidding? Fluttershy is overdue as it is.
And Iron Will acts rather reasonably?
We're not even sure Fluttershy is home right now. Why don't you give us some time to track her down for you?
Well, Iron Will does have some grocery shopping to do.
And this part made me realize something. Fluttershy is the one who decided to take these assertiveness workshops, and Iron Will was doing nothing but his literal job that nobody else among this crowd had any complaints about this entire time. And it kind of rubs me the wrong way that Iron Will is portrayed as the main villain here, who deserves this total troll face ponage.
Well, you'll get a full day and no less!
Okie dokie. See you tomorrow.
Wait, what?
When this whole thing only happened because he thought Fluttershy was satisfied with his course. And why would he be wrong in assuming so?
What do you mean you're not satisfied? Every pony has always been satisfied!
Once again, clearly nobody else that took his course seemed to have any problems with Iron Will, nor his lessons as far as we know. I guess Iron Will could have been extra responsible by doing a couple lessons on how to not take things too far, but I don't think he's actually that much of a bad guy on purpose, especially because when Fluttershy says this,
during your workshop, you promise 100% satisfaction guaranteed, or you pay nothing. Well, I'm not satisfied.
He leaves without a fuss at all.
No means no, huh? Nobody's ever said that to me before. Huh.
And on top of that, actually goes away learning a lesson from Fluttershy.
I gotta remember that one. That's a good catchphrase for my next workshop.
And I don't know what to think of how the episode is trying really hard to make you think that Iron Will is like a complete unreasonable bad guy because the characters say so.
Fluttershy is in no shape to deal with that creep. You're amazing, Fluttershy! You totally stood up to that monster!
But that's only if you trust these characters' judgment on good and bad, because Pinky was seen earlier playing mind games and deceiving people, along with Rarity taking advantage of this total simp by leading him on. And this makes me kind of question their stance on morality and their character, not Iron Will's. So I'm not sure if they really have much authority on what's good and bad here. If you really want to argue for Iron Will's villainy, you could bring up the fact that he doesn't really seem to have much respect for hands to yourself.
Your friend Fluttershy loved Iron Will's catchphrases. Word on the street is that she doesn't take no guff from no pony.
But I think that's more of a side effect of Iron Will's character being inspired from wrestlers.
Someone like Iron Will in season 2 was a new guy, and we sort of wanted to make him very much like a professional wrestler, kind of over-the-top guy. So there was a lot of discussion about posing and that sort of stuff, and make it very much like Hulk Hogan and all that. We just sort of tried to increase all of those elements in the storytelling, so with the shot selection and the acting.
Doing the poses. I think that's what really made that character. Not so much the voice, the voice, the visual, but the...
Yeah, the writing, the acting, the boarding for that whole thing just made that so funny for us.
Hence why he does this whole thing.
Rain down a world of hurt!
Treating the fence like a boxing ring. And I think they were just trying to exaggerate and amp up his physical prowess within cartoon logic, rather than showing us that he's disrespectful to our real life, not cartoon logic, of personal space. But your mileage may vary on that. That's just how I read the situation with that behind the scenes information. But then again, in this very episode, they also seem to have a similar concept to personal space as us.
Hey!
Would you mind moving back? You're in my personal space.
But regardless of my opinion on Iron Will, I would say that most of the problems here are on Fluttershy, but she also learned a good lesson at the end.
I'm sorry, but no means no.
So it's not like I'm going to call her the villain either, especially because she actually takes her share of responsibility for this mess. I'm just glad that I'm beginning to like Fluttershy now, you know, just as long as she doesn't turn back to normal by the end of this episode.
Don't worry, old Fluttershy's back for good.
Why does she have to go back to normal? I was just starting to warm up to her. Anywho, we got a nice wrap up to what started this episode's problem in the first place with Angel.
But I've learned that standing up for yourself isn't the same as changing who you are.
And I think it's kind of interesting how, along with Fluttershy, Angel actually goes through some mini character development of his own, because he went from this from the beginning of the episode into this, which is actually not nothing and a good technically hidden subplot for Angel's character development. What a nice way to wrap up this episode. Something unique to this episode is that there's an interpretation that this is actually a prequel episode that takes place before Twilight comes to Ponyville. Let me explain. And by me, I mean this TV Tropes article. Fluttershy, even in her earliest days, was never that much of a doormat. She's nervous, yes, and she prefers not to fight, but it's not because she doesn't know how to stand up for herself. This supports the theory that the episode took place before the beginning of the series. I mean, I guess, but this sounds like it's, working backwards with the perspective that this is a prequel to begin with. Let's see what else they have to say. Where's the rest of the main six anyway? If Fluttershy was having an emotional crisis, you'd think her friends would all help. Well, as we saw in Season 1, Green Isn't Your Color, Fluttershy and Rarity have been friends for a long time, enough to have developed an almost religious ritual of spa weekends.
I hate being late for our weekly get-together. The usual.
Applejack and Rainbow Dash also seem to have known each other longer than the series itself, and when you consider they're the athletes of Ponyville, that makes sense. In addition, Dash is head of the weather team. You'd better believe the Apples would know her, and she's Applejack's age, so it makes sense they'd be friends. Twilight, obviously, is still in Canterlot, and Pinkie Pie is friends with Every Pony. It all fits. I do like how everything technically fits within this perspective, and does explain what could be a plot hole in terms of how Pinkie and Rarity don't consult the rest of their friends for help on what to do with Fluttershy. The next point that's brought up sorta needs context from 2 episodes from now, but oh well. The recent episode Dragon Quest seems to give this a level of credibility. Cranky Doodle Donkey's appearance makes it clear that the episode takes place before A Friend Indeed, confirming that not all the episodes take place in exact order, so this could very well be a flashback episode. Wow, it's not like we have an official statement from the goddess herself saying that these episodes don't necessarily take place in chronological order without having to spoil an upcoming episode. Though, to argue against the prequel theory, this guy says, it definitely does not take place before Twilight comes to Ponyville, because Fluttershy writes a letter to Celestia at the end, and until Lesson 0, no one except Twilight has been writing letters for her. But somebody rebutted that whole point by saying, the tone of Fluttershy's letter to Celestia backs this up. She talks about when I first tried to be assertive, putting some distance between the letter and the events of the episode. As well, if this is a flashback episode, and the first time Fluttershy learned to be assertive without being a jerk, you could explain the origin of her stare. It's brief, but you can see Fluttershy give Angel a stare for a moment, right before he tries the salad she made for him. If she'd been capable of that all along, she would have used it already. I was thinking that the main thing causing me to be hesitant to think this episode was set before everything else is because of the letter, and whatever the wording ended up being like, on a meta level, because there is a letter to Celestia rather than there not being one, I doubt this was supposed to be a prequel when they wrote this episode, and if it was, I don't see what the point of not mentioning that in the episode would have been. If they really wanted to tell a prequel story, I think they would have done it the same way they did prior to this episode in the Cutie Mark Chronicles, where the past scenes were framed in an actual backstory format, with the characters relaying it. Or how we'll soon see in a few years once this retrospective gets to Season 6, how Applejack became honest is also told as a recounting. And for a more recent example, Family Appreciation Day wanted to explore what the past of Ponyville was like, to elaborate on its origins, and they did that in a flashback format, where a character was relaying it. So it seems as if this show has a format down for when they want to explore the past, so I don't really see a reason for this one to just be the exception to that. I guess you could bring up some inconsistent character traits like I mentioned earlier, such as how we've seen Fluttershy be less of a pushover in previous episodes. For an example, I'll just bring up this scene.
Twilight's taking me!
Although that could have just been an animation quirk, or because they didn't have her character down in the first episode written for the show. But even with that in mind, I guess you could use inconsistent characteristics in this episode as evidence that it's a prequel, but inconsistent characterization isn't a quirk exclusive to this episode either, so I don't exactly see that as a compelling argument, rather than just being a quirk of the show being written by freelancers. The only real thing I could sort of give this is what I said we'll come back to later earlier, which is how Rarity is randomly with Pinkie throughout this entire episode, even though it kind of makes no logical sense. If this was before Rarity became friends with Twilight because she wasn't in town yet, or before she became acquainted with Applejack because Look Before You Sleep hadn't happened yet, this would make sense as to why she's with Pinkie, because Pinkie's friends with everybody, right? But the rebuttal I have to that is that since when did this show care about putting logic and realism in terms of character appearances in episodes, rather than just shoving in whoever needs to be there for the plot?
I'm racing. Good one, Twilight.
I'm not joking.
But I do get that that's a meta answer, so it might not be very satisfying on an in-universe level, but I have a response to that as well. The extent of Pinky and Rarity's interactions that we've seen in the show so far was when they were playing tic-tac-toe in Dragonshy.
Woohoo! I win again! Ugh, that's 35 games in a row. Best of 71?
Though I don't think that really tells us much about their dynamic. I think what is more telling is something that took place 5 episodes before this one in the last roundup, which I didn't really mention this when we talked about that episode because it wasn't really relevant to anything, but it actually becomes relevant here because they get abandoned by their friends and have to take this thing home.
Chimichurri? Cherry Chunga. Chimichurri? Cherry Chunga. When I get back, you're gonna get it, Rainbow Dash!
And that probably forced them to bond and get closer. I can tell you firsthand, I've had some people I couldn't stand, but after being forced to do a group activity with them, I found myself inexplicably warming up to them and getting closer, and vice versa. And I think that kind of perspective makes a whole lot more sense than asserting a fundamentally different perspective to this episode. But definitely let me know what you guys think. But speaking of thinking, despite the fact that this episode is based on Fluttershy, and she's my least favorite of the main 6, I think this episode might actually be one of my favorites this season. Honestly, I think I'll have to eventually do a ranking of every episode of the show, but that'll probably have to wait until like 2030 or whenever I finish this retrospective of the entire show. But sticking with this season's episodes for now, I think this may actually be one of the ones I enjoyed the most as a kid, and rewatching it, it's not bad. Though I think the reasons I liked it back then and the reason I like it now are different. As in back then, I probably liked it because I actually once liked Fluttershy. Years ago though, not anymore. And that was then and this is now. And nowadays I like this episode because it's weird how I can unfortunately relate to this episode more than I'd like to. Now, I'm gonna get a little personal here to wrap up my thoughts about this episode. But My Little Pony is a personal show for me. I mean, in case it wasn't obvious yet. Therefore, I think it is kind of fitting to relate the show and my thoughts of it to points of my life. So here goes nothing. In my teenage years, I used to have very low self-esteem and be a pushover just like Fluttershy in this episode. I never took initiative, I never spoke up about anything, and I didn't really have any friends or hobbies or anything, but I also never really tried. And also, yeah, I know that Fluttershy does have friends and hobbies, but you get the point. Then eventually I realized that even though I can't control situations around me, I can control how I choose to respond to them. Plus, being surrounded by other people who never took any initiative or ambition to improve anything, it kind of broke me internally into realizing how bad that kind of mindset is, and I knew that I needed to be the change I wished to see around me. Therefore, I stopped being such a Fluttershy, and I became more outgoing, I'd say. But I went a bit too far in the opposite direction, where I was just being rude and unfunny and insulted people for no reason, in front of their faces and behind their backs. And I would like to think to myself and like to believe that all that came from a place of, affection. Kind of like how if we were talking one-on-one, I'd probably like insult you as a joke just to say, hey, we're close enough to roast each other because I actually like you. You have to tiptoe between like every single thing when you have interactions with a certain person. That's probably because you're not actually comfortable being yourself around them. So I'd like to think that that's what it was, but who knows? This is like very personal to admit, but perhaps it actually came from a desperate plea for validation. Anyways, after some self-reflection, I began to hate that new side of me as much as I hated the way I was before that. Of course, it wasn't all bad. Like back when I was quiet, that's when I was developing interests, I guess, such as My Little Pony and video editing and reading freaking Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So it's not all bad. Listening to some music. So I was developing in some direction and crafting my taste for the future. So I'm not going to like throw everything out the window. And plus, even when I did become louder and more obnoxious, it wasn't all bad because this new way led me to, take more initiative in terms of socializing and reaching out to people and being there for people. But once again, I'm not sure if either of those were good enough. And after realizing how not good I was acting, I've been kind of traumatized by my own actions. Like, come on, did I have to act a certain way like that? Did I have to say those things? Did I have to present myself this way? What did I truly gain from doing anything that I did? And thoughts like that. And thus, at a certain point, just like Fluttershy, I proceeded to shut myself out of interacting with people again. Not to the extent of how I was before, where I had zero sense of self-worth, but to a place where I take less social initiative, I guess. However, I'd like to think that since then, I've gone through some personal growth and found a decent middle ground at this point, and I'm trying. I know some people probably have an issue with how obnoxiously loud I get sometimes, or the stuff I say in my videos, or the types of jokes I make. And I think a part of that just comes from my upbringing, and I've never been in a place where I kind of felt truly, comfortable expressing myself in the way I am. That when I do get comfortable, maybe I get too comfortable and do things I shouldn't. And I really am trying. I'm still growing into whoever I'm going to be in the future. And clearly, I do have the abilities to be outgoing and sociable and charming. And now I'm just trying to channel that energy into something positive and encouraging for whoever happens to be in the line of me talking, like you guys, rather than just trying to be loud for the sake of being loud or talking for the sake of talking, Kind of like how Fluttershy isn't completely back to being the way she was at the beginning of the episode, and she isn't quite the way that she became after taking Iron Will's course, and she actually learns a lesson and applies it in a both social and personal context, where she finds some kind of balance. So, all that to say, I literally lived this episode out in real life. So for that reason, thanks for choosing to spend your time with me today. I actually do really appreciate it. And I think you guys probably like it when I'm actually genuine as well, rather than being over the top all the time. And no, I wasn't saying any of that to like sympathy bait or anything. I just thought it was fitting to, put a personal connection to a personal episode for me. But other than that, a million times thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.